thanks so much for joining for Impact State of Mind. I'm John Paul Parmigiani, CEO and co-founder of Impact Hub New York Metropolitan Area. Impact Hub New York Metropolitan Area is a nonprofit supporting entrepreneurs and change makers through programs designed to help ideas take off. We work broadly across the New York Metropolitan Area with focus areas in Manhattan, Queens, Newark, and Morristown, New Jersey. Impact Hub is a global association of entrepreneurial communities in more than 100 cities and more than 50 countries around the world. Impact State of Mind is a virtual series created to support and connect the social innovation community during the COVID-19 crisis. So thanks so much for joining for today's session, which is Legal 101 for Social Ventures with Josh Koenig, who is the TrustLaw Program Officer for North America and the Caribbean. Josh, thanks so much for coming on the session today. Really glad to have you.
Of course, we're really happy to be here. And John Paul, thanks so much for inviting our team at TrustLaw at Thomson Reuters Foundation to walk through some Legal 101 for the social ventures in the Impact Hub New York metro area. So I know that time is of the essence for everyone these days, so we'll hop right into some of our content here. We're going to keep this to a pretty tight runtime of 30 minutes, but if at any point you have questions, feel free to use that chat box or the Q&A function to submit those. And I know the great team at Impact Hub will make sure that I can get to those and answer them. So really quickly, just to kick off, as John Paul graciously said, my name is Josh Koenig. I'm the Program Officer for North America and the Caribbean at the TrustLaw program at Thomson Reuters Foundation. So what that means very quickly is within our program, a lot of my work is supporting our member networks in the US, Canada, and across the Caribbean, which includes the tri-state area. We work with a lot of folks in New York City. In normal times, we are based out of an office right around Times Square in Midtown, and also in the surrounding area. So we'll be hoping to cover about 4 things quickly today if we can in our 30-minute lunchtime window. So the first is just explaining a bit more about Thomson Reuters Foundation and the TrustLaw program, what it is that we actually do and who we are. The second is going to be walking through some of the resources we've developed specifically to help social enterprises and social ventures respond to some of the challenges that we're seeing as the COVID-19 pandemic really continues here in the United States. And then also some tools that we have that really help you understand, as a social enterprise, as a social entrepreneur, what are the legal needs that I may have, and how can I be issue spotting ahead of time to be aware of what those legal issues might be. Then we'll talk about some next steps from our end, which is we're a free service, and I'll talk more about that, but ways that we can offer pro bono legal support to your enterprise and what that membership process looks like. And then finally, I'll just pause at the end for some question and answer. But again, any questions at any time, feel free to use that chat function or the Q&A box to get those questions along and answered. So one last thing before we dive into the content. Today, I'm just going to be providing an educational overview of our resources and tools that will help you spot legal issues that as a social entrepreneur may appear in your work, but you should always consult an attorney of your choosing or use the TrustLaw service if you're seeking legal guidance. So a lot of the resources that we cover today, it's just an educational overview and shouldn't be taken as legal guidance. So let me start then by talking more about Thomson Reuters Foundation and TrustLaw and the work that we do before I go into those COVID-19 resources and some legal needs that you may be encountering as a social enterprise. So Thomson Reuters Foundation is the charitable arm of the Thomson Reuters Corporation. We're actually registered as an independent charity both here in the United States and in England and the United Kingdom. At the core of what we do is leveraging the expertise, reach, and reputation of Thomson Reuters to run free programs that inform, connect, and empower folks around the globe to drive socioeconomic progress. And we really focus in 3 core areas in our services. So leveraging the fact that Reuters is a core part of the Thomson Reuters business, we focus a lot on media freedom. So making sure that we are defending journalists and their work globally. And we also have a team of journalists in-house who report on issues that we feel might not be covered sufficiently by other outlets, topics like climate change and issues affecting the LGBTQ+ community. We also focus on inclusive economies, and this is really where a lot of our social enterprise support and work comes in. So we're really invested in thinking about both how economic systems can work more equitably and justly, also issues around data privacy and ownership, and finally, this issue of how do we embed social mission and purpose into business and corporate DNA? And we work a lot with the social enterprise community because you're a community that gets that, right? We have to embed social mission, sustainability, a notion about community-based support into what we do as businesses. And then finally, our human rights work, historically a big focus of the work that we do, focusing on issues like the rights of women and girls, and again, the issues facing the LGBTQ plus community globally. So the way we do that, and it's a bit different than what you might typically think of when you hear the word foundation, is we run free programs and services that organizations who are members of our programs can participate in. So TrustLaw is our global pro bono legal program at Thomson Reuters Foundation. So we operate in many ways like a matchmaker. We have over 1,000 law firms in our network and over 5,000 social enterprises and nonprofits globally in 175 countries that we count as our 6,000 members. And we're able to make a match between organizations that need pro bono legal support and law firms and legal partners that are willing to offer it to really drive social impact work. And in addition to that, 175 countries that we operate in, as I said earlier, we do have a really robust membership in New York City and in the broader tri-state and metro area. So I want to give some more specifics about what TrustLaw can actually offer, and then we'll again hop into those COVID-19 resources and some ways to understand your legal needs. So we offer what we call our legal advisory service. So that service is helping not-for-profits and social enterprises identify and articulate what we call corporate or transactional legal needs. So these are things like protecting your intellectual property and technology, corporate law, entering into commercial or business-to-business contracts, dealing with any banking, finance, regulatory issues, and employment needs. So anything that you're encountering in the day-to-day life of your business that addresses transactional issues, so issues that aren't going to court, our network is here to offer pro bono free legal support for those issues. We also offer legal research services, and we typically find that our social enterprises engage with this side of the service a little bit less, but we do want to highlight it because it's something that we offer. So if you're undertaking any advocacy as part of the social mission that's embedded into your business, and you want some legal research that can help support that advocacy, we're able to do that. So those issue areas that you see on the slide here are different areas that we've been able to conduct legal research. And we can publish that as a public-facing report. It'll be branded both as your organization and as Thomson Reuters Foundation and the law firm. So it really leverages the brands of those organizations behind the research report and can really help spur on future advocacy work that you might want to do in that issue area. Or you can use it to promote thought leadership, strengthen your brand, any other reason that you want to have that legal research. So the last thing we want to quickly highlight are some capacity building tools for the social enterprise ecosystem that we've built out over time. And the two that I really want to highlight is we run an annual training, mostly targeted at attorneys, but we also bring in stakeholders specifically on the legal components involved in social enterprise and impact investing training. So we want to make sure that lawyers understand what's involved in those areas of work in the business community and have the skills they need to offer world-class legal support, either pro bono or on a fee-paying service. So we really want to prepare attorneys to be able to offer the support that social entrepreneurs need and that impact investors need to execute their work. The second is trying to make the available legal structures for social entrepreneurs in the US and globally clearer and easier to navigate. So we are always really excited to see jurisdictions adopting new legal forms that, again, help embed that social mission and purpose into social enterprises DNA and into corporate DNA. We want to lift up and highlight new forms and structures to do that. So in the US, it was just updated at the end of last year. We have a social enterprise structuring guide, which also has an online interactive tool. If anyone out there listening today or in the course of their work is trying to figure out what's the best legal entity for me, I'm not sure what structure to take on, that's a great free tool that's available for you. And then we have those in a lot of other jurisdictions throughout North America and the Caribbean and globally, similar tools. So that's going to end the section that overviews a little bit about who we are and what we do. We move quickly through that because I want to be able to really dedicate time to some of the resources that we have. But again, any follow-up questions on what we're able to do, you can feel free to use the question and answer function or come back at the end when we have our question and answer session and ask those questions. So either hold them or put them in the chat. So I'm going to transition to talking a little bit about the resources that we've rolled out specifically to help social enterprises and other organizations respond to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So there are really three key resources that we want to highlight. The first is our TrustLaw COVID-19 Resource Hub. So there'll be a link at the end of the presentation to this, and we'll make sure that Impact Hub Metro New York can share this out however is most helpful to the network. But this is a hub where we've compiled resources that our legal network and members who support the social enterprise ecosystem broadly have put together, highlighting legal topics that are of interest to social enterprises. So you can see in this slide, we've highlighted 2 of them. The first is from a legal member, Paul Weiss. They put together a relief center that highlights available funding, particularly available funding that was available in March and April to businesses and not-for-profits in the US. The second is from Social Capital Markets, SOCAP, highlighting some resources to support social entrepreneurs during the COVID-19 crisis. So as you look for resources, you can always come back to that hub. It's really just a great resource. It's sortable by jurisdiction for all of our global members, just to help you find legal resources that are already out there, but we've organized them for you in one spot. The second is our TrustLaw COVID-19 webinar series. So I've highlighted 2 we did in the US, one specifically looking at employment and COVID-19 that we did, I believe, back in April. So just want to timestamp that. And then a training that we also did on the CARES Act and COVID-19, I believe also in April or May, but it'll be timestamped on that. So those are just 2 examples of webinars we've done in the US. I know we have an insurance webinar that'll be up soon. So these are live webinars that have attorneys walking through specific legal guidance on the issue areas that are described. So we've been running these live, and then they go up on our website to be accessed. So those can be another great resource, though again, they're never a replacement for consulting with an attorney of your choosing. And finally, we've developed what we call our TrustLaw COVID-19 legal checklist. And I'm going to be using probably about the next 10 minutes of the presentation to talk about that tool in more detail. So the TrustLaw COVID-19 legal checklist is really set up to help nonprofits and social enterprises identify what legal needs they might have in the face of COVID-19. Like all the tools that I'm highlighting today, this is a free tool. It's available online on our website, and we'll make sure that you get a link to it at the end of the presentation. So before I jump into this discussion of contracts, I just want to give a quick overview of what the legal checklist is and what it does. So it highlights a couple of categories that I'm now going to go through and give you some details on that are some of the legal issues that we think are most likely to arise or might be most prevalent globally to our social enterprise and not-for-profit members as they try to respond to the many challenges that have been posed by COVID-19. The checklist is a way for you to walk through, and it will prompt you with some questions, and it allows you to think which of these legal issues that this network has put together might actually be posing a risk to my business, might be something that I need to be thinking about right now. You can then use that to reach out to our network or to another attorney you're choosing, saying, look, here's a specific legal issue that I now think that I have because I've been able to do this exercise to walk through my potential legal exposure and go on and get that necessary legal help. So the legal checklist doesn't give you specific legal guidance or answers to any of the questions that you might have. What it does is tell you some areas that you should be thinking about that we're seeing across our network, and it then prompt you to go ahead and get that legal support. So how I'm going to use it today is just walk through some of these slides, and we really hope if you're a social enterprise that's on this presentation today, if this gets you thinking, that's a risk I didn't think about being posed to my business. I didn't realize that was something that there is law around, or I can use as a resource, then you'll then be able to use that to come back to us or to another attorney, another pro bono resource to get that legal help. So this is really a trouble spotting exercise that'll help you start to think. So I'm going to walk through a couple of these slides and we'll be moving quickly again, but these questions are intended to just help you think through what some legal issues might be. So contracts is something that we are seeing a lot from our global network, and I'm sure folks listening to this or on the line are going to have had some experiences with this too. So this includes questions like, have you had to cancel or reschedule your commitments? If you have had to do that from a contract, what are your rights? Are there any protections that the law offers? What are the implications of an inability to perform contractual obligations? For example, did you have to temporarily suspend a service? Did you have a grant-funded program? Any contracts you've had to terminate because you can't fulfill? With COVID-19, if that's the driving reason, are there protections for you in those contracts? Can you explore alternative means of performing an obligation? For example, can you move an in-person event to online? And finally, can you amend and update your standard contracts just to account for COVID-19 or similar major changes of circumstances? So all issue areas that if you're entering into business contracts or other contracts in your daily work, you might want to just be thinking about some of your legal potential concerns or needs in those areas. Next, we want to talk about employment and volunteers. Again, this is something that we are seeing increasingly commonly, both initially as social enterprises and businesses were having folks work from home, and now as we see some reopening here in the US, what return to work might look like. So what are your legal obligations to your employees, especially if staff have particular vulnerabilities or have caregiving responsibilities? How have you used sick leave policy? What are the implications of self-isolation and quarantine been, both again, at the start of the pandemic outbreak here in the US, and if there are positive tests as folks come back to the office? What health and safety measures are you putting in place, particularly for those who cannot work from home, or again, folks who are returning to office? Do your benefits currently cover medical expenses relating to COVID-19? If you had a work from home policy, how does it apply to your volunteers who might be supporting programming or engaging in programming? What government support or tax relief is currently available and may in the future be available to you as an employer? And then finally, what have the legal implications been of any temporary closures, working hour or pay reductions, layoff, furloughs, redundancies? All things to really be thinking about from an employment perspective. And we've seen all of this a lot throughout our global network. So I want to talk now about insurance as one more specific legal topic that we want to cover. And I want to say too, before I forget, part of the reason we've lifted up contracts and employment is that we also have pre-recorded webinars currently available on demand on our website that will go much more into depth to those topics. So not only are they topics that we've seen a lot from our global network, but if any of those questions got you thinking, is my business, is my enterprise responding to that? Your next step can be immediately to go look at that on-demand webinar and get some more educational overview and information on that. So insurance, we should have a webinar up on demand on this by midway through next month is our hope, midway through July. But just two things to think about. So do you know if your current insurance policies cover you from losses for the outbreak of an infectious disease or virus, including COVID-19? And do you know if it's going to be necessary for you to obtain additional insurance? So as you think about what your policies currently say and policies that you might be taking on, the checklist in full can help you think through that. And again, we should have a webinar on demand for that starting midway through next month. So because of the time that we have here together today, I am not going to go in depth into additional items and legal areas and legal checklists, but I just want to highlight 4 other issues that are in that document. And again, we'll make sure that a link is shared out to the document so you can view it after the webinar. So governance and risk management is something that we see from our network and is included in that legal help checklist. So these are things like how have your director or trustee duties changed in the context of COVID-19, if at all, and thinking about some of that risk and liability that you might be taking on, particularly in this return to work phase. So there'll be questions in the COVID-19 checklist that'll help you think through potential legal needs in those areas. Tax, finances, and solvency. So this includes, is there governance support or tax relief programs available in your jurisdiction, whether it's state, local, or federal here in the US. So just prompt you to think through what programs might be available. And again, all these issues are things that TrustLaw, once you identify, if you have that need, you can come back to us and we're going to be able to go out to our network and hopefully get you support for those issues. Data protection and privacy. So we've seen this a lot, both as folks move programming online and during our work from home phase in the New York City metro area. So what are additional data protection or privacy needs that you may have? And then finally, real estate. So are you currently in leases for your office, for manufacturing, for other, and any other buildings that you occupy, and what are legal options available to you there? So I'm just going to end there and move very quickly through those 4. But again, there are more questions in the document that will help you think that through. And I did see it looks like we have a question come in, so I'll leave it to Impact Hub team. If that is something that is relevant for me to speak to, feel free to jump in. If not, we'll come back to it during the question and answer. So the last thing I'll add here before we take a quick pause and move to next steps is that there are some legal issues that we can't offer support for as the TrustLaw network, and we always want to make sure that we're sharing that out too, so you just have a really good sense of when you can come to our network for legal support. So advocacy on behalf of an organization or an individual, this is typically more for our nonprofit members, but because of our own charitable status, we can't do advocacy work. Request for assistance on behalf of a third party. So let's say your enterprise doesn't necessarily have needs, but you have a friend who has an enterprise and you know that their need exists for one of those legal areas, that friend's enterprise has to become a member themselves. You can't submit the request on their behalf. Litigation, disputes, or disagreements. So if it goes to court, we can't assist. Disputes and disagreements, it depends, right? So if you want advice on a contract that a partner wants you to fulfill, right, and you're not sure if you can, we typically are going to be able to support with that. But if a partner is threatening litigation, if you're already in a really contentious disagreement around a contract, that might not be something that we could take on. Visa applications or advice related to work permits, visas for employees. It's possible that we're going to see more of these similar issues come up in the US, but unfortunately we're unable to currently help with those issues. Administrative or tax issues that are not related to a legal issue or question. So what tax relief programs are available to me in New York City? We can help with that. Can you actually fill out this form and organize all of my internal governance documents and get it submitted? That's going to be still your responsibility to do. Urgent assistance. So we have a minimum 1 week waiting period just because of the way that our service works, from you contacting us with a legal issue to potentially being able to match it with a legal member of our network. So we always encourage, if any of these questions that I've just walked through are raising a potential legal need for your enterprise, go ahead and submit those to us as soon as possible and submit that legal issue. So for instance, by the end of the month, by a month from today, by July 25th, that you're going to need to get a contract signed with a partner and you want an attorney to look over that, submit that as soon as possible ahead of time. So it gives us that leg room to go on and get an attorney legal team that can support you with that. And then finally, just translation of documents. We do have a global reach. So for instance, if you're a New York City-based enterprise, but you operate in Latin America, in South Asia, in East Africa, we're able to offer support in those regions, but we can't do pure translation of documents. So I will take a quick breather here before we move into our final next steps. And again, Impact Hub team, if any of those questions that are coming in are better to be addressed now and not during the Q&A, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think we can just have them at the end. I think that's fine. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, John Paul. So I will just walk through these next steps quickly, and then we should have at least 5 minutes for our questions at the end, which is great. So the next step that we recommend, if any of the questions that I ran through are prompting you to think about a legal need that you might have, I encourage you to go ahead and become a member of TrustLaw. That allows you to access our free legal support. There is no charge to apply to be a member or to be a member. Our membership is free, and all the services that we're going to offer are free. So we really feel that we can offer a value in that sense. And we have a short online application. So you just have to check our membership eligibility criteria, which I'll run quickly through, submit an online application form, and within 2 weeks, we'll process your application and get back to you. So quickly on our membership eligibility criteria, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through each of these in detail, but I'm just going to highlight one real key that we have for social enterprises. So that is, we ask that if you have a for-profit structure, you commit to reinvesting a majority of profits back into your social mission, so 50.1%. And we look for that either as a public commitment on your website or to be part of your founding documents. And the reason that we ask for this is not because we doubt that if you have a for-profit model, you're pursuing your social mission. We fundamentally believe that you can both be a for-profit business and be making a dramatic and important social impact in the world. It does just help because of our global reach in 175 countries. There are different developments in the social enterprise space in different jurisdictions. So having that reinvestment criteria allows us to have an additional thing to tell our legal network. Not only does this social enterprise have this great social mission, but look, they've committed to reinvesting at least half of any external profits they're making back into pursuing that social mission. And we'll work with you on the language for that to find something that's comfortable for your business. But it is a commitment that we require from all of our social enterprises, regardless of the jurisdiction you're based in. And then the second is we do require that you've already been incorporated as a legal entity. So we have those free tools if you're looking for a structure, but we do ask that you've already incorporated to become a TrustLaw member, typically for at least 6 to 12 months. So already had a structure for that range. And then finally, if you do become a member, we have a welcome call. You'll be able to sign up for that. It'll walk through all the details of how to actually use our service. So the last thing that I will say before I move to our question and answer is, why should you join TrustLaw? What's the value of pro bono? We estimate in the 10 years that we've been operating the service, we've saved businesses over $172 million. So think about what a part of that could mean for your enterprise and for your work. And if you do think that we can be of value, please feel free to be in touch and start that membership process. So I'm leaving my contact information up on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to me. I help manage all of our new members in the tri-state area and in the United States. So feel free to reach out, and I will take a pause there and let John Paul jump back in with any questions that we received as we've run through.
Yeah, great, thanks. So we had a question. Could you tell us a little bit more about the trainings you offer? You mentioned the legal ones, but you also mentioned stakeholders. Can you describe that to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically it's once a year in the US, our social enterprise and impact investing training. And a lot of the content is directed to attorneys, but we always put the agenda up ahead of time. And some of the sessions are broadly applicable. So for instance, in December of 2019 in New York, when we could still bring large groups of folks together from across the tri-state area, we ran a day-long social enterprise training. And one of those sessions included a session titled something along the lines of Through the Eyes of a Social Entrepreneur, Legal Issues We've Encountered and Picking a Structure. So that's going to be helpful, right, for an attorney who might be thinking about supporting, but it's also helpful if you have a new enterprise and you're trying to hear from folks who have really built out their enterprises, much like you'd be able to do through Impact Hub New York Metro area programming, or you're really trying to figure out what structure is best for me. To be able to sit in on those sessions, there's real value for stakeholders. And we really feel like something that we can offer the ecosystem is a chance to bring together kind of the legal perspective and the practitioner and stakeholder perspective. We don't always feel that there's networking spaces for that. So the value of a stakeholder can be those individual sessions that are going to be really directly applicable to what you're doing, and also the chance to be in dialogue with the legal profession and build networks and connections there.
Great. So the next question was, and I want to be cognizant of time because I know we only have a few minutes left. We do have 2 more questions. The next question was, with regard to insurance, how do we make sure the coverage includes pandemics? What should we be looking out for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So unfortunately, I can't give you direct legal guidance on today's training, but what I would encourage you is just continue to check our website, and I can make sure it's shared back with John Paul. We really do anticipate that in the next 2 weeks, we should have a webinar up that's going to cover that and answer precisely those kinds of questions. And any other resources that we have from our network, I believe there are already resources up on insurance. You can go to that COVID-19 resource hub too, and that'll get you answers to that question.
Great. And then the last question here, in regard to real estate, how are you seeing tenants navigate commercial leases? Whose responsibility is it to reconfigure space, landlords or tenants? I don't know if that's something you can speak to, but.
Yeah, unfortunately, just because of the scope of the presentation today, I can't give you a kind of direct legal answer to that, but I just want to point you back again to our tools. So the COVID-19 legal checklist is going to give you some questions to think through about your real estate needs. If you check the resource hub, we should have some resources already up from our partners that will help you think about. And then again, if you become a TrustLaw member, right, the only cost is your time to complete the application. There's no cost for membership, and we can get you matched with a legal team that will help you walk through that.
Great. Well, if there aren't any other questions, then Josh, thanks so much for your time, and thanks so much for joining our community and sharing your insights. Again, to anyone who's watching either now or in the post recording, TrustLaw is an amazing program. I mean, they really do a lot of help for social enterprises of all kinds. And I highly recommend that you follow up with them and become a member and get access to some of the support. Legal advice and legal help is expensive. And this is a great way for you to access really top talent. And do so in a way that's manageable. So thanks so much, Josh. Really appreciate it. And everyone have a great rest of your week.
Hey, well, thanks, John Paul, so much for having us on to the network. So I'll just leave this resource slide up as I close here. And we'll make sure that those resources are shared out with the network too. And we're here to help as we can be useful. So thanks so much for everyone and take care.
Thanks, bye.